Welcome back, luxury lifestylers. If we're not mistaken, we're going to look at part 2 of Top Most Expensive Mistakes in the World. In this episode, we answer the question: what is the cost if you accidentally lose a space probe in its orbiting Mars? Who made the mistake that later turned out to cost $3.2 billion? But first and foremost, let's start with a joke courtesy of star-name-registry.com. Sherlock Holmes, Watson, and the stars. Sherlock Holmes and John Watson are camping on a case they are investigating. After putting up the tent, having a good dinner, and a bottle of wine, they go to sleep. In the middle of the night, Holmes wakes up and nudges his faithful friend. "Watson, look up at the sky and tell me what you see," Holmes says, shivering. "I see millions and millions of stars," Watson replies. "And what do you deduce from that?" Watson ponders for a minute. "Well, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Somewhere in the universe with so many billions of stars similar to the Sun, there is a high probability that some of these stars have Earth-like planets. And assuming the Earth is typical, some may have developed intelligent life. It means that humanity may not be alone in this vast cosmos." "What did you deduce, Holmes?" Holmes is silent for a moment before he replies. Quietly he says, "Though my more immediate concern is the fact that clearly, someone has stolen our tent. If you want to keep up with all the trends in the life of the super rich. If you don't want to look out of place when talking to other billionaires. Or if you appreciate a joke and want to give our YouTube channel a helping hand. Subscribe to this channel by clicking that subscribe button at the bottom right of your screen. Also, smash that notification bell. By doing this you will be automatically notified every time a new, luxury lifestyle video comes online." Now let's return to Blunderland. The top most expensive mistakes in the world, part 2. Number 20, the Mars Climate Orbiter got lost in space. Cost: $193.1 million. On December 11, 1998, NASA launched an unmanned space probe, the Mars Climate Orbiter, to the planet Mars. As part of a prestigious mission. The space probe was supposed to study the change of the climate, the atmosphere, and the changes on the red planet's surface. In addition, the orbiter would be used as a communication link between NASA's control center and the Mars polar lander. Sometime in September 1999, the U.S. Space Agency lost all contact with the spacecraft. Presumably, she was destroyed in the atmosphere. In retrospect, it turned out that all this was due to human error, namely a calculation error. The calculations for the steering motors were performed using unit of the British-American measurement system, pound-seconds. Instead of Newton seconds is programmed in the software. As a result, the space probe approached Mars much too low and burned up in the atmosphere. Those who at the time had to search for it in the Milky Way were now, by a twix of fate, being called the Raiders of the Lost Orbiter. In our humble opinion, they must have been nuts to think they were ever gonna find it. Number 19, typo from a stock exchange broker. Cost: $225 million. A clumsy stockbroker from Japan experienced that small mistakes can have major consequences. In 2005, this jackass sold 610,000 shares of JCOM for the ridiculous amount of 1 yen. This equates to $0.0096. While the effective price was 610,000 yen for each share. The company where the broker worked was able to buy back the shares itself, with the known cost of no less than $225 million. It almost corresponds to the net profit of the group for the fiscal year to March 2005. So the man will have come home with the message: "Honey, let me relax for a while because I made a little mistake at work today. Do you know why a stock market crash is worse than a divorce? You lose all your money, and you are still stuck with your wife." Number 18, Ford Edsel. Cost: $250 million. In 1958, Ford went the extra mile in its marketing approach. The company conducted an extensive customer survey and had questioned what they expected from a family car. So far they had done everything right. Unfortunately, this is only half the story. In their next step, the marketeers took aside all feedback from their customers and designed the car according to the standards they themselves set previous to the research. The result was an ugly dragon of a family car, the Ford Edsel, which consumed more gasoline than Ernest Hemingway drank whiskey in his heydays. The car was a real flop and the mistake cost Ford a whopping $250 million. A few Ford-related questions. What do you call a Norwegian prostitute? A fjord escort. And what's on pages 4 and 5 of the Ford owner's manual? The train and bus schedule. Number 17, the sale of Alaska by Russia. Cost, $700 million. We have a vague suspicion that Vladimir Putin would never ever even consider selling Russian territory to the United States. On March 30, 1867, the then Imperial Russia decided it was time to sell redundant Alaska to the United States. The Russians thought they had made a smart move because the barely 3,000 Russians who lived there mainly lived from the fur trade. Moreover, it was a territory difficult to defend and they thought it was just a matter of time before the United Kingdom, which then already owned Canada, would proceed to invade this arid area. Tsar Alexander II eventually sold Alaska to the Americans for $7.2 million. This would now equate to a whopping $110 million. The Americans, in their 49th state, found a wealth of gold and petroleum, and made about $700 million on the deal. Not bad for what was once considered a worthless lump of ice. A few questions about Russia. How does every Russian joke start? By looking over your shoulder. What does a Russian with Tourette's syndrome shout all the time? Yukhanul Fukov. Number 16, 3 Mile Island nuclear disaster. Price, $836.9 million. In 1979, a pressure valve in a reactor at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania failed. As a result, radiation-contaminated water flooded the buildings and the nuclear core was on the verge of melting. This would have exposed thousands of people to very dangerous levels of radiation. Luckily, the engineers were able to shut down the reactor, avoiding a major nuclear disaster. The defective pressure valve left a financial disaster at a cost of $836.9 million. But hey, if you don't know the price of nuclear power, wait until you see the Chernobyl. What do you get when you drop a nuclear bomb over Paris? French fries. And one more. What do British nuclear engineers eat? Fission chips. We're halfway through our countdown. Keep watching if you don't want to miss this. The cost of a B-2 stealth bomber crash. What moron made a mistake worth $3.2 billion? And of course lots of cool jokes in between. Number 15, Cerro Grande fire in New Mexico. Cost, $1 billion. In May 2000, in Los Alamos, New Mexico, it started as a controlled fire but quickly got out of hand. The fire destroyed 280 houses and more than 40 laboratories. 47,000 hectares of forest land also went up in flames. It was the most destructive wildfire ever in the state of New Mexico. This raises a few arsonist questions. Why did the arsonist join Tinder? To see if he could get a match. Why did the arsonist go to the gym? To burn some calories. What do an arsonist and a bartender have in common? For special occasions, their cocktails are on the house. Number 14, B-2 stealth bomber crashed on takeoff. Cost, $1.4 billion. If a taxi driver has an accident at work, he can in the worst-case scenario cause a total loss, with a usually dilapidated yellow taxi from prehistoric times. However, if you are a fighter pilot and you take off with the most sophisticated state-of-the-art bomber, of which only 21 have been made at the time, the price tag is just a little higher. In this case, $1.4 billion. The B-2 stealth bomber was designed to outsmart any enemy radar but was taken down on takeoff by its own built-in sensor. This happened in Guam, on a test flight. You could call it a pilot project. The culprit in this story was a moisture-damaged sensor, which provided storage in the computer that caused the aircraft to climb too steeply. Immediately after takeoff, it lost a lot of speed and then crashed. Fortunately, the pilots were both saved by their ejection seats. What is the greatest fear of suicide bombers? To die alone. Why does someone decide to become a suicide bomber? In the end, they have a blast doing their job. An instructor says to his suicide bombers, "Okay guys, I'll show this only once." Number 13, Quaker buys Snapple. Cost, $1.4 billion. In 1994, Quaker decided that their oatmeal was a bit too dry, and so they bought iced tea maker, Snapple, for a whopping $1.7 billion. As it turned out, they had overestimated the weak tea. Despite the fact that Snapple was quite popular, competing iced tea makers quickly launched similar drinks that also turned out to sell a lot better. Quaker already decided in 1997 to sell the tea factory again for barely $3 million, and the acquisition quickly went down in history as one of the worst corporate mergers of all time. Here are some vegetarian jokes. My girlfriend has changed so much since becoming a vegetarian. It's like I've never met herbivore. Why do vegetarians never moan during sex? They don't want to admit that a piece of meat makes them happy. A man goes to a vegetarian restaurant, and soon he realizes that it is a huge missed steak. Number 12, Copper King falls from his pedestal. Cost, $2.6 billion. Yasuo Hamanaka dreamed of becoming the king of copper. The man was known as an extremely shrewd investor, initially. His plan turned out to be successful because at one point he owned 5% of all copper in the world. With the revival of copper mining in China, market conditions changed rapidly and Hamanaka's copper empire melted like snow in the sun. In addition, there was a disciplinary investigation into his ill-gotten profiteering at the time of his peak period. The man eventually ended up in jail, losing his fortune of a staggering $2.6 billion. We sure hope the bars of his cell aren't made of copper. A few stock market musings. The COVID-19 toilet paper craze was a lot like the stock market crash of 1929. But this time, instead of everyone dumping their stocks, they're stocking for dumps. The stock market is like a guy with IBS. All it takes is one fart to ruin the day. How is marijuana stock sold on the stock market? Buy high, sell higher. Number 11, Columbia Pictures acquisition by Sony. Cost, $3.2 billion. This $3.2 billion mistake goes back to 1989. Japanese electronics giant Sony spent $4.8 billion to buy out American film producer Columbia Pictures. With this, they paid 22 times Columbia's total annual cash flow at that time. Sony Pictures Entertainment was born. Initially, they scored a few good movie hits including Sleepless in Seattle and In the Line of Fire, both from 1993. However, things quickly went downhill, and especially the big-budget film Last Action Hero became a huge flop. In 1994, the big shots at Sony concluded that they would never recoup their investment, having already lost $3.2 billion by then. What do you call a shellfish action movie star? Jean-Claude Van Damme. Where did dead James Bond actors go when they die? To oh heaven listen. Speaking of celebrities, a video you should definitely watch is that of Top 10 Most Expensive Yachts Owned by Celebrities. Besides the fact that at the beginning there is a nice joke as usual, after watching this short and fun video you will know all about the extravagant habits of the stars, and what decadent parties they throw on their floating palaces. At the end of this video, it will appear in the center of your screen. All you have to do is click it, and you can continue enjoying. So be sure to watch it. Next time we are going to look at Part 3 of our trilogy. We're continuing our countdown of the top most expensive mistakes in the world. We will be counting down from 10 to 1. And we will answer the questions. How much did the most expensive mistake in human history cost? And we will see what caused the Challenger to explode and what price tag was attached to it. Another fun question to answer is, what was the cost of Tiger Woods' numerous affairs? It speaks for itself that all of this will come with some fun jokes. We already feel sorry for Tiger, so make sure you watch it. It would mean a lot to us if you gave this video a thumbs up. If you don't want to miss all the interesting tips about the luxury lifestyle that we will be sharing in the future, then click the red subscribe button and smash the bell for notifications. Let us know in the comment section below this video. What luxury lifestyle topic would you like us to do one of our next videos on? We will dedicate it to you and mention you in the video you suggested. Thanks for watching. Top Most Expensive Mistakes in the World, Part 2.